some wonderful questions for our panel here. I thought it would be nice to go down the line and have everybody just introduce themselves, what they're here for, their role in their business, and then we'll kick it off. So Aaron, if you want to start.
My name's Aaron Shields. I'm the principal owner of Design Build Associates of Maine. We're a custom home builder in southern Maine primarily, but we're up the coast and as far as western Maine, like the Rangeley area.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Chelsea.
I'm Chelsea Torrey. I'm a mortgage loan officer with Town and Country Federal Credit Union. Prior to the credit union, I worked for the USDA, who everybody loves immensely, obviously. And so I have brought a good amount of that affordable housing experience with me to Town and Country, but certainly love working with my peers in the community on the other stuff as well. So.
Hi, I'm Amy Foley, Scoville Foley's real estate group. I have been a broker for 18 years. I feel I specialize in new construction. We have a lot of new construction development, Carrie and I. And I also own the signature home real estate group office. And I'm Carrie Scoville. I'm her business partner. I think Amy and I have been together for 12 years. We like to call ourselves or say that we specialize in new construction. And yeah, thanks for having us.
I'm Bob Strong, with Payne Certified Appraiser, work with property valuation services for companies, and now part of class valuation.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to roll through. We have maybe one or two questions for each, and we'll go down the line. If anything sparks off, if you have some burning questions too, something we like these little side conversations. So don't be afraid, maybe raise a hand for our panelists as we go along, but we'll try to get everybody a few questions here to start. So Aaron, we're going to start with you. So Aaron, what are some of the challenges and opportunities for new residential construction in the current market?
I'd love to start with the opportunity part, but I'm not sure there's a heck of a lot of that. So it's challenges everywhere. It's challenges with having developments approved in communities around Greater Portland. It's labor challenges, material challenge. I mean, ever since go back to the whole COVID thing, but it completely turned our the construction world upside down. It's slowly coming back some, but yeah, I think that it's I've been building for 25 years and it's never been this challenging. We're having to source our labor further away from home, and the same with materials. And I think materials now are starting to become more streamlined, and the pricing has stabilized. It's stabilized to the largest high that I've ever seen. A lot of people will ask, and they'll say, well, has the lumber come down? And it's funny, forever I used lumber as the indicator of how expensive construction was, and now it's like, yeah, labor's come down to a new high or a new low. I'm not sure where it's at. It's stabilized into the normal yearly cycle, but it's all of the other costs that have increased our construction costs immensely. Let me just give you an example of something. Wood might make up like 30% or 25% of our construction costs, wood product, but there's all the other stuff like shingles and siding and windows and doors, and all of that's gone up 25 to 50%. Some stuff has gone up even 200 or 300%. So I think those are the challenges. Is how can that possibly continue to go on, and before the prices of homes are just not attainable by the average Mainer or average person, period. Opportunities, I'm sure I can find an opportunity here. I think there are opportunities for communities to make some changes in their zoning and in how they go through their approvals. Right now, it's so costly to build a subdivision in southern Maine. I'm gonna give you that. It costs over $1,000 a lineal foot to build a road in communities like Saco or Scarborough. It used to be $350 a lineal foot. So some opportunities might be, how can we create smaller lots so that we can get more lots per lineal foot, or, you know, per road length. And then there's always the offsite costs that we're having to pay as well. So there's some opportunities on the city or town side to help make things more affordable.
Appreciate that. On that, you mentioned again with the costs going up with everything, how do you balance customer expectations with budget constraints?
Well, I'll tell you, I do it, which isn't necessarily going to be the way that every other builder does it. Before we sort of engage with one another, to even start the process of creating a home and building a home, it's, what's your budget? I mean, it's like the hardest question you have to ask them, but if it's not realistic, there's no time to work together. I mean, with prices so expensive right now, if, you know, the customer can't be realistic of what they're going to spend, then I hate to say it, but how can you take the time to work with them? We can design any home to be within some sort of budget, but if they're not realistic, then it's not gonna happen.
What about tiny homes?
Yeah, you know, communities have to allow them, first of all. And not a lot of communities do. So that's one of those things of, you know, what are some of the opportunities? But that's a niche market too. I'm never gonna be building a tiny. Like the tiniest thing might be 2,000 square feet. And so, good question. I'm just not sure. You've got to have a development that allows them, a community that does, and then find someone who's, you know, going to build them and bring them in.
About
Sure.
the tiny home thing, we had 8 of them to sell. We wound up calling them cottages. When I said tiny home, people were like, what?
Yeah.
You know, and I think on Home and Garden TV or whatever people watch, and they see these tiny homes and how cool they are, and it's like a romanticized thing. When we actually built the product, people came in, they're like, oh, and ours were like 520 square feet. They were double the size of some of the ones on TV. And so people came in, they're like, there's no storage, like, how am I gonna live here, you know? And we wound up selling them, but it wasn't as well received as I thought they would be, based on this, again, romanticized vision of tiny homes, tiny home living.
But are they less expensive, so that's all they have to choose from?
They're less expensive, but you're
There's
only
other
500
costs.
square feet, but then you also like get 8 units, and you still have to take care of the lawns and the snow removal and, you know, all those things, so their HOA fee wound up being $425, I think, because there was only 8 homes to split it with, and as you know too, I'm sure, like landscapers, snow removal, all those guys don't even take on new clients, and when they do, it's a pile of money, so.
This is covered down to interruption.
Yeah.
I'm curious, isn't there a state standard for a minimum square foot, like 600 feet or something?
That I don't know, he might be able to speak on that.
Yeah, for the building code, but these are not necessarily bound by the building code. That's one of the difficulties of how do you separate them from being able to build a home by code and by zoning, versus making something affordable. And there's a lot of zoning ordinances that say a minimum size home has to be 750 square feet. And that rooms have to meet certain size requirements by the building codes. But the tiny homes or cottages, most of the time can't meet those requirements.
Actually, next question I'm going to have here for Chelsea. We can start with tiny home financing as a lender, because that's one of the biggest, but what are some financing options and programs available for new construction, but then touch on the tiny home.
Yeah, so I'll start with the tiny homes since we're there, and then we can move on from it. Tiny homes are a luxury, unfortunately, and that's been the biggest problem. We actually did begin financing some tiny homes, that as long as they were built for Tiny Homes of Maine, because Tiny Homes of Maine was the only company that was titling the tiny homes, and so they were ultimately financed as an RV, just like a camper or a boat or anything like that. And so what you run into with that is that you're you're bound to these limitations on your RV loans, which usually like for our recreational vehicles, it's a 12-year loan maximum. And so when you talk about a 30-year mortgage or a 12-year, there's a big difference in what your monthly payment potential is there. And so people, you know, especially people on restricted budgets, they kept coming in, they're like, I want a tiny home, I want a tiny home. It's like, unfortunately, the costs just don't work out. I do have some clients that I had worked with. I had done their original home purchase, which was a ranch in Gorham. They decided they wanted to go tiny, so they sold their house, they bought a lot. I did the land financing on it, and then we did the RV financing for the tiny home. And they, after I think it was like 4 years, they now sold their tiny home and they built a stick-built tiny home on the lot that they purchased. And I just did a refinance for them to consolidate all of that together, because they were so strapped, like they were trying to do all of this in an effort to make their budget better. And it just cost a fortune because there's not really a streamlined financing tool to make that happen. So unfortunately, it's romanticized greatly, but it really has not been able so far to be done on a budget. Hopefully, I know UMaine is working on the 3D printing and all of that fun stuff, and hopefully that will get somewhere in the future to create an affordable option for that. But the real, true, and tried tiny home is not the way to do it. So now on to construction lending, which is why we're all here. So we've certainly worked pretty hard in the recent past to redevelop our construction loan policy. It was, you know, a 30-year-old policy that went to, you know, 25% at this stage, 25% at that stage, 25% there, 25% at completion. And there's not a single builder out there who wants that type of payment schedule right now, especially with the rising cost of materials. So we worked to kind of redesign that, re-envision it a bit to be more competitive in the marketplace. And I think it really mirrors a lot of our competitors. And then also we've done a modular unit where Twin Town Homes is one of the modular builders locally, and they do a 5% release upon completion. And so that's how we structure ours, where we'll hold back just 5%. So we're doing progress billing throughout the construction process so that the appraiser can come out, inspect the work that's been done, say, yeah, you're good to release money, we're making progress here. So it's really based on what your expenses are throughout that process. I will say, I mean, the construction financing for an individual borrower, it ebbs and flows, and there was a lot of interest for a period of time. And then of course we do all this work to bring it back to life. And I would say that it's dwindled quite drastically. Most of our builders that we've worked with have wanted to do turnkey. They don't want to deal with the bank. As a loan officer, I have no place in deciding when money's going to be released, really. I don't think that there is a place for a loan officer in the construction disbursement phase. That's why we rely on our vendors, our appraisers, to go out and inspect the construction that's occurring to make sure that happens. But in the meantime, we've done a lot more turnkey construction where we have implemented extended rate locks that have allowed. I actually just had one close last week at the Downs, and luckily we had locked this rate in back in April because they would have seen about a point increase on their rate as we hit the closing table last week. So certainly having that extended lock feature has been a bit of peace of mind for the builders, especially, so that they know that the borrower's financial profiles, you know, from what we can control, they're not going to be faced with significant changes later on down the road that could affect their eligibility.
Thank you. Good question. Good answer. Moving down for Carrie or Amy, speaking from the realtor perspective here. So Any particular different ways, or how do you market and sell for new residential properties to potential buyers on new construction? Is there any particular different type of client or strategy?
Well, it depends on what stage the construction's in, like when we started it down, I had a piece of land. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go sell that, go sell the dream. And that's basically what we did. We would go in a showroom and show a map and be like, okay, this is what it's gonna look like. And you gotta trust me. It's gonna be awesome. And, you know, we would have a sample of what the kitchen cabinet would look like and countertops and things like that. But and then artistic renderings and coming further, even after the few years that we've been selling, like we're about to start another condo project in there, and we're gonna have a virtual walkthrough. It's not even vertical, but you can almost like walk through. So there's some really cool technology out there that will help you kind of paint the picture for people. And then Carrie else.
I have, yeah, but my builder likes to do models, so we do a spec house, load it to the nines with the different features, the different types of granites and quartz and whatnot, but, it makes it a little bit easier to walk the person through the product and show them the designs and the different features that are included in the purchase and sale price, so. But again, you started off with a piece of paper and, you've got to sell that dream and you've got to sell that rendering. And for some people, especially in my 55+ community, it's harder to see what's on paper and to trust and visualize. So, the project really did start to take off and things happened. So, and then we did drone work and, the Matterports and all of that, put it all together.
Just curious side question, with the technologies updates, are you incorporating any good like AI programs for these renderings? Is there any recommendations maybe for realtors out here trying to get into more new construction?
We're actually starting the AI stuff. We're speaking to a company right now, marketing company that we're gonna hire, I think, to do some stuff for us for some of our newer projects.
Yep.
The thing is, if you take on a development, you're gonna have to spend a bunch of money before you make it money, right? Cause like we got the down, we spent a pile of money and didn't get a check for a year. So, you have to be willing to invest that money into your marketing and just know that it comes back to you, and do a good job for your builder, and then they'll continue to use you.
And I think builders, respect that we put in the effort to sell the product.
It really seems like the partnership between your realtor and your builders, needs to be a strong relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
We're gonna go down to Bob here. So on appraisals, well, first, Bob, I'm looking at a great question. How easy is it to find comps for tiny homes out there? So what are some of the factors that affect the appraisal new construction process? Anything in particular?
Well, Carrie, here, selling the rendering, that's every appraisal for us generally for construction, is a set of plans, a vacant lot, the budget. It's the challenge a lot of times, especially trying to go through, kind of meld the budget, the contract. A lot of times there are allowances, but we need to know what those allowances are. What's actually included there, as opposed to just like $10,000 capital. So that gets tricky for us. And I'll say it's the same approaches to value that we do for obviously for the older homes. It's really comes down to sales comparison, which kind of gets to what time it goes. For new construction, I just checked this morning. There's 3 or 4 Portland distinct construction. West Philly 1, Portland's 5, 4 West, Buxton is like 7. So for new construction, we're trying to find comps. It's extremely challenging. So we have 2 choices. One is to go back further in time, or to make more ratings. So either way, we're making adjustments either for market performance, for location changes. Both are doable, but when you look at an appraisal within a subject property or get a comment quarter, credibility might be lost. It's a big adjustment for location. So there's the cost approach, which is another approach to value. Historically, appraisers will do it for construction, but lenders don't want to see us being cost approach to this like there's second basically just to get what air and other builders are doing to say what this is going to cost. So and I just want to touch on that here. We're going to figure out 300. So this is whatever people start asking me questions about cost per square foot, I generally shut down. The reason being is for them to understand who I'm talking to. It's the architect who's just talking about the structure itself. This is the builder who's talking about the site work, driveway, utilities. This is the realtor, the lot, the house, and everything else. Who's the appraiser? Who's taking out the lot, taking out foundation, taking out driveway. As much more smaller, as a smaller figure. So a common thing we hear from folks after the review, structure appraisals, why you using, $210 square foot. When builders tell me it's $350, well, then we can explain that. You gotta take out a lot, your driveways down here, water and sewers here. So just make sure that when you're talking about the cost per square foot, value per square foot, in what context that number is.
What about finding like in a neighborhood that everybody bought the land, built their houses? You don't know what those cost.
Those are settlements. So someone buys the land and builds the home. Those are settlements. If we don't have access to those, we might be able to piece together that information somehow, but we can't put that on as a cost. We can't add those figures together and say this property sold for this. Something for that. But it's still useful information, right? That should be considered. Not just around there. We estimate somewhere between 35 and 45% of all our construction appraisals don't appraise for applications. Which means that you're employed that, materials and expensive, folks in the trade, their rates have gone up. It's just, and home construction has just changed so much in the last few years. I mean, the days of fiberglass insulation are very much going on. We're taping, taping every seam, we're ice and water shield the whole roof, or silicone and nail holes. It's just, so much is going into the infrastructure of the home that, that's a challenge too, evaluating that. And putting in pre-finished floors, but they have 12-inch walls with R40 walls, R65 on the roof, and air exchangers and everything else. So it's a very dynamic, field, and I think we all as professionals just have to try and keep up with it.
That was well said.
Just anecdotally, I've noticed on whether it be turnkey or new construction that we have a lot of appraisal issues the more rural it is. They just cannot support the cost of building. So I don't know if there's what the path forward with that. Obviously, we need to build more houses, but we just find that rural areas they can't support the cost of building. So almost all of our rural ones. We run the whole state, so Franklin County, I'm looking at you, that's where we have all these appraisal problems, but I can't even get a brand new mobile home to appraise Franklin County at all. So I don't know how we wrestle with that as an industry, but
Look at the numbers, inventory is pushing up, right? Fewer newer listings are coming, but sales are down like 25%, in the last 12 months compared to 12 months prior, so properties aren't selling quickly, and that's obviously rate driven too. The buying power is kind of reduced by the recent rate. So we are going to see, I think, months of inventory is up to 2 months for the last 2 years, like 0.5, 0.6. So we're starting to see the shift. It's just until this interest rate changes, I think, but I'm not really getting to your question, but we just need more transactions. And that gets first time home buyers. They have been able to test the market now for years.
Next question is kind of along that same vein. I want to get a realtor and lender's perspective here. So again, kind of going with adjusting the expectations of our buyers, when you have appraisals that come short, or you have costs that were thought to be controlled changing, all this nuance since the pandemic, especially here too, right? How are you helping to communicate this and work with your buyers?
I think first of all, you need to set expectations right away from the get-go with the buyers. And we were just chatting about this on the way here. I mean, it's new construction. It's not perfect construction. We're going to have blips in whatever, how we facilitate it. I mean, my builder, I'm lucky, he does a base price. And then we do selections and upgrades paid out of pocket. So it helps with the appraisal piece of it. We try to keep that purchase and sale price down lower so that appraisers can find comps. And, it's explaining that to the appraiser, educating the buyer, educating the buyer's agent, you know, Amy and I do this day in and day out with new construction, so, you know, we love when an agent comes to us and says, hey, look at, I don't do a ton of new construction, I'm kind of new at this. Then we're like, okay, you know, we, that's fine, we'll walk you through this. It's harder on our end when somebody like thinks they know a lot and then kind of muddies the water a little bit, and we have to kind of like go back to square one and be like, okay, let's regroup here, so, I mean.
And just kind of touching on what you said, when someone calls me and says, oh, I want to build a house, you know, first question is, what's your budget? Where do you want to be? What's your budget? What are you expecting? Before it even gets to the builder's desk, you know, because people, they're just, a lot of them just aren't in reality, you know, it's like, oh, I want a 3,000 square foot house in Scarborough, my budget's 400. Oh, on the east side though, I cannot live on the west side of Scarborough.
You could find a lot for that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're lucky, 'cause
If you
there's two on the market.
Right, exactly, there, yeah, so, you know, just, and just being, and you're not doing them a favor by kind of,
Appeasing them.
appeasing that dream, it's just like, no, like, hey, there's no land there,
Tough
and if
love.
there was,
Yeah,
right.
tough love.
100%, cause I don't have the time either, like, to deal with it, you know, and it's just so. What were you gonna ask?
Well, I have a question for the builder, or maybe for everybody. So if I have a cash person that wants to build their house and they want to pay cash, so they're not involving any kind of banks, what kind of stopgaps are along the way that they can be protected too? Because, you know, so we don't have any appraisers doing it, we don't have it, so who helps them along the way know that things are smooth and that things are costing what they should and blah, blah, blah?
Most of my customers are cash customers, so I
Okay.
think for the last 5 years, 80% of them are out-of-staters coming into Maine.
Okay.
And they're primarily cash, or they're willing to do a construction loan. And they have a huge amount of money to put down. On the cash customers, it's all built into my contract. You know, my contract for a cash customer is very difficult, or very different, I'm sorry, than one from a construction loan, or one that if I'm building, you know, a house with 20% down or something. Those checks and balances, there aren't a lot for them, unless they want to hire their own construction administrator to oversee the process, which I have had happen before. And there's a handful of construction administrators in this area that do a very good job of that. In that case, they pay for that cost themselves. And either way, in my contract, I'm going to have here are the 5 payments that are due, and they're stage payments. Basically, at some point after the foundation is in and certain parts are done, they're going to owe the first payment, and then after all the structure is up, it's the next payment. So it's all structured. But I would, if someone was really, they were nervous about it, first thing I'd probably say is, I'm not the right builder for you, because I build 100% on collaboration and teamwork. And if someone comes to me right off the bat and we've worked together for a couple months and they say, geez, I'm afraid of this, I'm probably not your right builder anyway. But I would recommend, I would say, here's the name of a couple of these organizations, or these companies, and they could work for you, and I'm okay with it. So that, but you know, one of the sort of along the same lines of expectations. If you're upfront with them and you build a very collaborative process with them, by the time you get to the part of signing a contract, you should be close enough where you shouldn't need any of that. As far as trust, yes, yeah, that absolutely 100% trust.
What
Yeah.
about getting an appraisal based on spec? Like, you know, they don't have to pay for appraisal, but maybe that would be a peace of mind for them. Is that something that you've ever done before?
Yo, for sure.
For a cash customer,
Yeah, so if the cash customer was nervous about the process and whether or not it was gonna be the right thing to do.
Mhm.
I'm just throwing that out there as an idea.
Yeah, I mean, points like the cash customers are probably more concerned about making sure they get the houses they want as opposed to.
Are they?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
grade or
Because
something.
we know that right now in the market, with all the information available to us on a daily basis, you know, the average consumer is pretty savvy.
yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are.
So I would say, I mean, occasionally that happens, One thing I'll just touch on briefly if I can is that construction collaborating is something we started not too long ago. There was folks in the area that have been a long time to do the job. But one thing that we do up front, is obviously the lending, the banks credit unions, is we'll do a feasibility study. So we'll actually take all the serial, you know, that we're given, plan specs, budget, the contract, and then try to figure out if the market does support this build. So at least up front, the buyer knows, okay, you know, I'm building a novel here. So, or I'm not, I'm building something that's gonna fit in well with the market. So just any red flags, when we look at the budget and say, why is this well under this $5,000? Well, I'd rather just put it in, you know, so there are situations like that where, you know, we want to make sure that everyone's.
I think using well-known builders that have a history of, you know, good reputation and whatnot. I mean, there's a lot of risk that the builder is doing with, you know, they're putting a lot of money into a product before they're getting paid. They're paying their subs, they're paying their road, they're digging the foundation, the excavation. So the buyer needs to be educated, like, hey, look at, yes, you have to trust the builder, but the builder has to trust you that you're gonna pay them because they're putting their neck out before they're getting a paycheck. So I mean, doing the education part on knowing who the builder is, the, you know, background, you know, there's lots of ways you can research a builder.
Absolutely, yeah.
So along the lines of the development level, I'm not sure if you build or you develop as
Both.
well. I would think the greater Portland area particularly, a hurdle you may face is like each municipality has permit limits, how many builders. So how does that? It's probably discovered down. Obviously.
Yeah, they're obsolete for many.
You don't need building permits. But do other municipalities, how would that manage? Do you see like, hey, if I get an investor that is interested in investing, the conversation that goes on, like, yeah, we'll do that, but it may take extra time because the permitting process. Is that
Getting it approved through the planning board is the first hurdle.
Yeah,
And
no,
then
I
you have
get
the
it.
permitting process. And, you know, some of these municipalities, including Scarborough, are, you know, I get the whole growth ordinances and trying to control the growth, but, you know, on the other hand, state of Maine is short by about 80,000 houses. And we have to build 9,000 houses a year for the next 6 years to have enough housing for the people that are here. And so the town.
Wouldn't be, that should be the only town.
You know, like the towns need to get, the towns and the state kind of need to get their heads together and figure out like, how to fix this problem that we have.
That's true of all of the greater Portland area. That's a pretty, is that a significant hurdle? It's like, hey, yeah, it's a little bit longer, or is it?
Oh,
So
no.
you're doing a 20 or 30 home.
Yeah, I mean, like, we have a developer that's trying to get condos approved in Saco and it's been like 2 years. You know, and it's ridiculous and there's no need for it, but it's just, every time they go, like, okay, we should get final approval this Wednesday, and they go and it's like, yeah, no, sorry, you need this now. You know, and meanwhile, we need that housing, we need those condos to be built so people can live in them because there's not enough housing in the state. And so it's just, they're chasing their own tails. It's very frustrating. And it's
a
very
big complaint
expensive.
in the state, but yet town to town, nobody wants it in their backyard.
Yep. A lot of
Gorham's
it.
fighting it right
Yeah.
now, Saco's
Are
fighting
you
it.
affiliated with, my understanding is out on Pride Street in Westbrook, there's gonna be a large scale, condo, I don't know exactly what's going on over there.
Oh, I don't know, it's not us, yeah.
It's not us.
If you don't mind, I want to comment on this because I was in municipal government for almost 20 years before I went out and started building on my own. I was in code enforcement and I was a town planner for a long time. They're spot on. It's frustrating. One of the reasons why I got out of it is because I couldn't stand what I was having to do and the people that I had to work with. And that's pretty bad.
That's why I left government.
Yeah, I
too.
mean, you know,
Let's give them our power.
I won't speak of specific communities, but one was mentioned here about a project that's taken 2 years. It's kind of like, they have all these studies that say they need it, but they put up all these roadblocks that push the price up. So that it's not attainable to the local residents. in Saco, we were gonna do a development, like 10 years ago. And the price point of that development, was the price point that their comprehensive plan and their housing study, said that they needed. But once the construction costs of the infrastructure and what the community wanted us to build, it just couldn't happen anymore. That's when I was talking earlier about, that the towns and the communities, they're driving the cost of these homes. You know, when Gorham requires sprinkler systems of every new home, it's $12,000 to $15,000. Their permits are $15,000. They're at $25,000 to $30,000 before you go put a shovel in the ground. You know, communities like Auburn, I knew I'd said I wouldn't mention. You know, we had a piece of land under contract in Auburn in their growth zone. And we wanted to do probably 150 units. Auburn was amazing. Actually, that community was terrific to work with. Their planning department, their staff and everything. But I went to the first planning board meeting and all of the neighbors said, we've been sledding on those hills for years. We've been walking those trails for years. And the planning board actually said, oh geez, yeah, I think we want to keep it open. And even though for no reason did it meet any of the requirements of the zoning or the ordinance to not let it move forward, you know, it still happens. So the community thing is frustrating.
I mean, you're talking like $5,000 school impact fees,
Yep.
you know, $3,000 intersection.
Recreation,
Recreation
yeah,
fees.
intersection fees in Saco for
That's
Jenkins.
apparently the problem, the town has the interest of school typically, you do a large scale, now school's gotta be, Skywar's a perfect example, I tried there actually, and the school was already undersized back in 2000. That's the battle they have. My understanding is that that's the problem, that the battle is residential housing doesn't support taxes.
Right.
They just don't, especially if you got 3-4 kids going through.
You have to push the
Yeah,
commercial in
so-
order to offset it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what they're doing. They're fix the mix. They were
What
calling
about,
it-
isn't the state dealing with, density, that's something to allow municipalities to do that? It would make sense if they could be more dense.
That would be 2003.
Yeah, but half the communities won't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Most of them aren't prepared in their zoning ordinances to even let you
Yeah.
do it.
Even though the state's willing to pay to help them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
up to
and
speed, they
the
won't.
state planning office was basically shelled from almost all of their employees like 10 years ago under a previous governor. You know, it was taken out of one department and almost all the people were let go. So now you don't even really have a good state planning office to push and help implement that healthy.
That's the one where you can build a property on the back of your land, right?
And or do a duplex, have like a little accessory unit off of it, in order to live in. There's all sorts of different scenarios to get more housing.
So the American board is boosting event on for 2 days.
Thank you.
Holiday by the day, on LD 2000.
Yeah.
Who's hoping?
You're one of work.
Oh,
Putting on.
You'll be right after a membership meeting.
Oh, yes, actually, I think I did see that. I did see that, yeah.
It's a class, it's a three-card class on LD 2003.
Awesome.
Put on by our group. So we're gonna whole panel, folks from the state, some municipalities, and then some builders talk about the issue over 3 seconds in the greenhouse.
Good plug, Brett. I like that.
Thank you.
I mean, plug accomplished.
And by the way, I just, one last thing, take airtime here. As a developer, it actually, for me, it's frustrating when you hear our schools are getting overpopulated. If you take a town like Gorham and you look back into the 80s and see what their population, what their classes were then. Yeah, they're bigger now than they were 10 years ago, but there's a lot of these schools that were bigger back in the 80s than they are now. And they never had a problem being able to be sustained by their tax base then. They never had a problem that they were building 100 houses a year in the community. But now so much more is required of a school that they may have the same population that they did back in the 80s, but they need something twice as big and 5 times more expensive.
And 100 more people to do it.
Exactly, yeah. So you know, I lived in Gorham up until last year when we moved to Scarborough, and you know, we put all of our kids through the school, and I was very grateful that it was a really good school. But for them now to put on the brakes and say, we only can build like 30 houses a year or something like that. I was astonished. I used to be the planner for them. It wasn't that bad.
And you
Um,
include a 55+ community
yeah.
in that, it doesn't have anything to do.
Yep, that's not gonna
Schools,
put
in the
one,
schools,
one
no.
kid in the school system.
One.
And the Downs has produced, I think, 47 kids of all the ones that have under over 500.
What's your residential build out? Is it like 20-year plan, or does that include the, commercial level?
Yeah, when we originally started in the very, very beginning, like in 17, 18, they said 30 years, and it became 20, probably like 15 to 20, yeah, I know. We sell out everything before it even built, so, yeah, probably a 15 to 20 year build out.
Just the residential.
Oh, that's all the same, like they're doing everything at the same time, it's in phases, yeah.
So we know rising interest rates are impacting our new construction. The soft costs, I'm sure that's on the same trajectory as we've seen right here. I don't think was like that a decade ago. One of the other biggest concerns, going a little off script right here, but Aaron, I'd like to see if you have any insight on the lack of skilled labor for new construction. That's kind of the other third big thing I've been hearing often. What, as a builder, what are we doing in the industry for that?
So I'm guilty of this right now. I've had friends and colleagues of, for 20 years or 25 years that I met when I was a code officer that have worked for me over the years. And nowadays you can't get them to show up. You can't afford them. And as a result, I've gone in the direction of hiring, out of state labor to come up and fill those roles of the people that I couldn't find. And I felt bad at first. I really did. I did, because I'm so faithful to the people that are part of my team. Now I just have found new teammates, and it's a must. In order to keep going, something has to change, and you're either going to make the change yourself, or you're going to fall by the wayside. And there's a lot of changes coming if we can't find the blue collar skilled labor especially out of our tech schools. I don't know what they're teaching. I was a product of tech school.
My husband was a teacher in tech school.
Yeah, and we knew coming out, and we, wasn't expected we were going to get paid $25 or $30 an hour to sit there on our phone all day. And that's a sad state right now. It's a sensitive subject, because a lot of my other guys are like, what the heck are you doing? And what am I supposed to do? I need to continue on in business. So
My builder does the same thing. I'd say 90% of his crews are from out of state. And it's for the same reason. He just couldn't get crews to show up.
Yeah.
And it's all across the board. It's like painters and framers and everybody.
it's just not roofers
It's just
anymore.
not- Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I can comment on that too. My husband is a plumber, has a plumbing company, and I mean, he's got a couple employees that came out of trade school, came from SMCC, and they think they know everything because they sat in a classroom learning plumbing. And he learned from the time he was 16 years old, working alongside a master plumber, and he learned the trade that way. He wasn't an academic student. So, and it's a different world of like, there's been such a push for college education where it's like, yeah, it might be a fit for some people, but I think like we need to do a much better job, obviously, of aligning, the trades with apprentices and people who are going to learn by doing, because not everybody learns from a textbook or in a classroom. So it's a problem.
Well, speaking of preparing people for the industry and getting ahead of time, I actually have a question for Bob on the appraisal side. Developing skilled labor for building, how are we doing as far as having available appraisers and having to develop people like that for the industry? How's that work?
They've been very spoiled the last few years, or as well, probably experienced it. Maine has the highest, appraisers, the highest in the country.
I believe it.
So it is a national problem. It's just been amplified here in Maine. And I'll just mention that recently that we've been working really hard. I say we, Mar, Maine Dunkers, incredibly, We all approach the state board, 5 members, and ask them to make just a small policy change to make it easy for them to get the business. And they moved a little bit, but not enough. So there are some things that can be done on a local level, but on a national level, Fannie and Freddie, secondary market, they recognize the problem, and they're implementing new options where appraisals aren't required, right? And appraisal waivers been a thing for decades, but they put in a few other steps in between, and I might go out and talk to folks, I bring this up all the time, so you'll be probably contacted more frequently by property scanners than the actual appraisers. And that it'll take, we're always behind the curve, in terms of nationally speaking, but more and more, it won't be the appraiser collecting the data because their rates are too high. It's going to be property scanners going to go out with a tripod, an iPhone 10, and a hero device that goes on top, and it's like Matterport, but it's not your iPhone. So that's the direction Fannie and Freddie are pushing for some of the low risk loans. So it's going to take time for that to happen, but right now we get called every day for appraisers looking for work. So we'd like to see these go back down a little bit just for the consumer. One thing, Kyle, it's like we had a manufactured home down east where the best quote we had for a manufactured home selling for like $130,000 was $1,650. And some of the lowest median income places in the state, they can't afford that. It was more than legal taxes, more than insurance premium. So we definitely need to make some changes, but it's not gonna happen overnight. So
Things are getting expensive, people, across the board. We're gonna run down to Chelsea here, and then I think maybe for the last 10 minutes, if you have questions, anything you still want to ask, we'll open it up for discussion here. But Chelsea, can you walk us through maybe what a qualified new construction buyer looks like, maybe from a creditworthiness, down payment, like what would that person look like in order to be able to step up to you and get financing?
Yeah, well, I will say, I mean, there's obviously a lot of options. The majority of people who are coming in for new construction have a lot of skin in the game these days. However, I do the loan packaging for the USDA direct loan program, and I have a couple new construction underway with that program. So that's 100% financing. Not easy to pull together at all, but it happens here and there. I mean, the biggest thing with our typical new construction product is, what's the timeline of construction and how, what is your housing cost while you're waiting for that build, and how does that factor in? We do operate on, as we disperse the funds, it's an interest only payment calculation. So it's not like a full blown, $3,000 a month mortgage like many of them are right now. So, I mean, there is a lot of flexibility there. Ultimately, when we're doing our new construction product is designed to be a single close. So we're not having to, we're closing on the loan, right up front in the process, and then kicking over the funds for disbursement. So it's a little bit different than when we're looking at a turnkey transaction where it's going to be end loan financing, because in that situation, we are qualifying the borrower up front, getting a commitment letter, and then we're waiting 6 months, 9 months, 12 months for construction. Who knows how long it's going to take sometimes. That's why you have to work with a good builder that can give you a reasonable timeline. But in that situation, then we're having to update credit, we're having to update income and all of that stuff at the tail end of the transaction. So there's certainly a lot more risk in that. But like I mentioned, we are offering extended rate lock periods so that at least will kind of put a little buffer there and prevent any significant changes on that end. But of course, a borrower can still lose a job at some point during the construction, or experience some other type of drastic change. So, I mean, it's tough. Like we all know that real estate, there's no real cookie cutter process unless you're doing a huge scale development, but they're all different. So it's, all walks of life is trying to find out the best options and solutions for people. And again, the builders, from most of the builders that I've dealt with, they don't really want to deal with the construction financing piece. They don't want to have to ask for the money as they go. So a lot of them are like, you know, we're gonna float it and crank it out as fast as we can with a sizable deposit from the borrower. You know, they're not gonna do it on peanuts, you know, no skin in the
20
game.
to 25%.
Yeah. So it really just, the down payment piece has been a big factor, but I'm in a unique position where I see both ends of the spectrum with that.
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
I think it's important, to work with a lender that knows the product. Obviously, Amy and I have multiple different products that we put out for new construction. Scarborough Downs condos was a different beast. I mean, a condo in itself is a different beast. You have to make sure that the lender knows the product. We've been faced with numerous lenders that say, yep, I can loan on that. Yep, no problem. Yep, no.
We know they can.
We know
Right
they
now,
can.
but you can. Trust me, you can.
Trust.
Oh, Chelsea.
So we very soon in the beginning, we
Then we
learned
wait for it to
who
fall
our
apart and
lenders-
then we
Yeah.
push it over to the
We learn who our lenders are because there are things called non-warrantable condos and you have to know the product. You have to know,
how to phase it, how they're gonna phase it, and is it gonna fit and get.
my condos are duplexes in my 55 plus, so I know that my one unit is sold. This unit has to be substantially complete if Freddie or Fannie are involved in the other unit. So you have to know the product that your buyer is buying so that you know what loan or what lender can work with that condo. And like Amy and I just said, like, that, there are lenders out there that think they can do certain loans and they can't. So,
You just can't email.
yeah, you just can't. And then just also to follow up to bring the appraisal aspect into it is who's doing the loan at this time of year? Is looming and seeding gonna have an issue if an appraiser flags, hey, this isn't loomed and seeded yet? Oh, that's gonna be an issue for Freddie, or that's gonna be, you're gonna have to escrow. So, being on top of the product and what the appraiser's gonna mark and what the lender's gonna expect, there's a lot of pieces.
This is for you also, rural development, can they can they help at all with this housing situation?
The government help? No.
Haven't we already discussed that?
Yeah.
The
Which does everything and not to help.
What was I thinking?
Yeah, I mean, so as a loan packager for the RD Direct program, I mean, RD pretty much, everyone who calls their office, they're saying, call Chelsea. And I'm like, okay, well, this is really cool, but I don't have enough time in the day to deal with all these people. The government, they're doing everything they can just to stick to the black and white. Nobody is gonna get outside the box over there unless people really continue to push it. And again, everything takes time. You have to go through congressional inquiries and all that fun stuff. But again, like, as he was saying about the state planning board, RD went from, when I worked there, we had 83 employees full-time in Maine. They're down to like 30 something. So they've lost 50 positions over there. And now they're just, pushing everybody off all the time. So.
Don't they have funding for new builds though, or new? schools or-
The fiscal year ended September 30th. They go through a few weeks in October, typically dry spell. I did see a notice today that guaranteed loan funds are readily available now. However, the direct loan funding is always a little bit delayed on that. And then of course, we're gonna be faced with another potential shutdown the middle of next month. So it's really hard to manage that right now. I would say at any given time, I have between a dozen to 20 RD applications that I'm trying to work through, get submitted, get approved. And then those tend to be the borrowers that need a lot of hand holding through the process. They need a realtor who knows or is willing to learn about the program and isn't just out there making offers. I just had one make an offer on a property the other day and they didn't put inspection contingencies in the contract. And then they got mad at me because it's my fault. They didn't do that, obviously. And so they're like, we're going to check with another lender. And I said, good luck trying to qualify that person for $300,000 with another loan product, because it doesn't exist, so.
Mhm.
It's really unfortunate. I think, the biggest thing, like, you're all here in the room and you're all trying to increase your education, and, I think the biggest thing is not being too competitive in this industry where we're not talking to people, and we're not learning the information we need to learn, because that, like, we can all learn from each other, and, there's like, and I think there's too many people coming into the industry that are just trying to make it on their own and fake it until they make it, and they're not gonna make it. So,
I think it kind of goes without saying here, to be successful in new construction, you need real strong collaboration between your realtor, your lender, your builder. We obviously have trust in our appraiser, Bob. They cover the whole damn state, so we're good there. So make sure you have experience and trust with your team, and advise your clients along the way appropriately. Any other last questions? We have a couple more minutes here. And then maybe Audrey, I don't know if you want to plug anything for upcoming events coming up for the board.
I think Britt covered it. I hope to see you all on Thursday. So our membership meeting will also be having our affiliate expo. That's going to be from 8 to 8:30. Our actual membership meeting is going to be 8:30 to 9:45. And then we have our LD 2003 course from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. But yeah,
Is
it's
it
going to
full?
It is not, no. So please, 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 if you have not registered yourself already, head on over to our website under the events or recent newsletter, recent emails. But yeah, we hope to see you all there. We also did just have a October mid-month newsletter come out today. Just kind of going over some further away events that we have coming up. Another reminder about dues in there and a few other important things, so make sure to keep an eye out for that.
Perfect. Thank our panelists. I think they earned a round of applause. Thank you guys.
Thank you to everyone
you.
that joined us via Zoom. Have a great rest of your day.